Hello and welcome to the April 7th edition of the Bub Report. I am Rion Charles. This week, we take a deep dive into the ongoing crisis of gender-based violence in Grenada. This epidemic came to a head last week on the sister island of Carriacou when Esther Peterson, the latest victim of gender-based violence, was laid to rest. Her murder sent shockwaves on the sister isles and has many concerned about the persistent issue of gender-based violence in the state of Grenada. In 2020, a comprehensive survey on gender-based violence in Grenada, conducted by UN Women and the Caribbean Development Bank, found that 29% of all women experienced at least one form of violence, and that 1 in 3 women will experience physical and/or sexual violence during their lifetime. Later on our program, we sit with Grenadian World Athletic Champion Lyndon Victor for a post-mortem of the just concluded CARIFTA Games, hosted in Grenada. Jamaica continued their dominance at the Games, winning a total of 83 medals, which included 44 gold, 23 silver, and 16 bronze. The Bahamas followed in second place with 34 medals in total, consisting of 9 gold, 13 silver, and 12 bronze. Trinidad and Tobago secured the third position with 27 medals, which included 4 gold, 11 silver, and 12 bronze. Team Grenada secured 14 medals, including 1 gold. While there was a technical glitch in the last race of the day where Grenada was expected to medal, observers say Team Grenada gave a good account of themselves by placing 7th in overall rank. We welcome our guests: World Athletic Champion Lyndon Victor, Elaine Henry McQueen, Gender Specialist and Human Rights Advocate, Howard Pinnock, Senior Crown Counsel in the DPP's office, and Anel Clarice Phillip, Educator and Advocate. Here is our host, Dr. Kellon Bubb, with this week's editorial titled Road Safety: Challenges and Opportunities in Grenada. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we are happy that you can join us for another edition of the Bub Report. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellon Bubb. Please remember to like and share this live stream so that others can get an opportunity to participate in this very important conversation. Now, another Easter holiday weekend in Grenada was marred by the tragic death of 2 young bikers following a fatal collision in the St. Andrew Northeast area. The continuing trend of motorcycling accidents in Grenada must be of major concern, as this high incidence of recent road deaths involving motorcyclists appears to be trending upward. The cause more often being speeding and losing control. But the reality of motorcycle-related mortality in Latin America and the Caribbean is quite staggering. In the Americas, some 150,000 people died between 2010 and 2012 as a result of road traffic injuries. The Pan American Health Organization's report on road safety in the region of the Americas notes that the risks faced by different types of road users differ significantly across subregions. In Latin America and the Caribbean, 27% of traffic deaths occur among pedestrians, 20% among motorcyclists, and 3.7% that is, among bicyclists. In North America, the highest proportion of deaths is among car occupants, which is about 70%, with pedestrians accounting for 12% of road deaths. In the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, 44% of road traffic deaths are among motorcyclists. As motorcycles have become a more common form of transportation in the Americas, they have also grown as a road safety concern, the report notes. Motorcycle-related mortality rose significantly between 1998 and 2010 in all subregions, including the OECS. Now, the challenge for the Americas is to have adequate public transportation policies to cope with the increased use of motorcycles and to ensure measures that will protect all vulnerable road users, said Eugenia Rodriguez of the Pan American Health Organization, who is the regional advisor on road safety. The region has made progress with respect to legislation in recent years, but there is still a lot that needs to be done. The regional report on road safety notes that 42% of the population in Latin America and the Caribbean is now protected by drinking and driving laws, but only 5 of the 14 countries with such laws consider their enforcement as good. The report also warns that laws on motorcycle helmet use have improved, but more efforts are needed to enforce those laws and to ensure that helmets meet quality standards. The report also notes that policies that promote walking or biking must be accompanied by investments in public transportation systems to provide alternatives to motor vehicle transport and, in particular, to improve the safety of cyclists. The countries of the Americas in 2011 collectively adopted a regional road safety action plan that calls on countries to adapt their legislation to address the top 5 risk factors for road safety, which are the following: speed, alcohol, helmet use, seatbelt use, and child restraints. The third United Nations Global Road Safety Week, observed between May 4th to 10th, seeks to draw attention to the plight of children on the world's roads and to spur action to better ensure their safety. Of course, may the memory of the bikers who tragically died last week be a blessing, and may they rest in peace. And at this point, we are going to commence with the very first segment of this week's edition of the Bub Report. It is a very important conversation that we need to have, not only when there is a particular high-profile incident in the news, but this is a perennial issue that continues to affect the people of Grenada. So I'm happy to be joined by our panel of experts for this week's edition of the Bub Report. We have three very important people who can speak to this issue. We have Mr. Howard Pinnock, who is the Senior Crown Counsel with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in Grenada. We also have Mrs. Elaine Henry McQueen of UN Women, and we have Annelle Clarice Phillip, yes, who is an advocate for women and girls in Grenada. Panelists, welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob, for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe for all three of you, this may be a very first time appearing on the program. So I'm happy that all of you can join us today for this very important conversation. Now, I would tee this conversation up by saying that in 2023 and in the first quarter of 2024, sexual offenses were observed as one of the prominent offenses dominating the criminal assizes list. And I want to begin with the enforcer of the law here by way of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Pinnock. Mr. Pinnock, big picture, can you talk about the types of sex-related crimes your office has been prosecuting over the last 2 to 3 years?
Firstly, Doctor, I should say, in your introduction, you said very important people. I don't know about that, but I would say, though, Dr. Bob, that it's a pleasure appearing on your program. As prosecutors, we spend most of our working lives in court or preparing for court, so we don't really get this opportunity to have this sort of conversation, outside of court. In terms of, and just let me just say quickly for the purpose of your viewers, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions was established under the Constitution. and we are charged with the overall conduct of all criminal prosecutions in the state of Grenada. Presently, we are headed by Mr. Christopher Nelson, King's Counsel, and we have a team of 4 law prosecutors, including myself, who assist him, and of course, our support staff. I should also point out, and this will become obvious when I give you the statistics, that there is also another prosecution limb in Grenada, and that is the Police Act empowers the RGPF to conduct matters on behalf of the Commissioner of Police. So the RGPF has a branch called the Prosecution Department, and what they do, they conduct matters on behalf of the Commissioner in this magistrate's court. So these two obviously will work very closely together. Now, in terms of the past 2-3 years, in fact, I went back a little further than that, because when I joined the DPP chambers in 2006, and I started to read the legal cases dating, of course, before that, the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal they have commented as early as the 1990s that they have noticed that there's a prevalence of sexual offenses in Grenada. So it's not an issue that is new, and I really need to make that point. Now, in terms of the offenses, we use the term, Dr. Bob, sexual assault. You might hear sexual assault, sexual abuse. But if we use those terms loosely, but what we do have on the law books in Grenada, and the prevalent offenses are rape, incest, sexual intercourse with children under the age of 13, but under the age of 13 and under the age of 16. And of course, indecent assault. And we have an offense called sexual assault as well. So those are the prevalent offenses which the DPP's office prosecute. And in terms of the statistics, Dr. Bob, and I know this will be quite interesting. We have between 2019 to the present, offenses against children, and this is those under 13 and those under 16, but above 13, the RGPF laid 516 charges. So there were 516 offenses reported between 2019 to 2024. Rape, we had 312. Indecent assault, and this includes both children and adults, we had 596. And incest, we had a total of 25 cases. But so far, the stats, and I have to say, Dr. Bob, you put me on the spot because I'm I've always been poor at mathematics, but I'll just, I hope the statistics will speak for themselves. The most prevalent offense we have had, Dr. Bob, is that age range of children between 13 and 16. And that by itself is 434 matters in the 5-year span between 2019 to 2024. So it's 434 matters.
You said 434. 434. That is extremely staggering. Go ahead.
Yes, and this is just for children between 13 to 16. That is the prevalent, that is the age group that is the offenses committed against them are most prevalent. Go ahead,
between 13 and 16. Ms. McQueen, I want to bring you in here and welcome to the program. Based on the data that the Crown Counsel just articulated here, is it a case that people are reporting those offenses now that the numbers seem to be staggering, or are we actually seeing very disturbing trends in respect of these sexual related offenses that are being prosecuted?
Thank you, Dr. Bob, and good morning to everyone. There is some uncertainty at this moment about whether or not the number of cases reflect an increase in the number of incidents that happen, or an increase in the awareness that has led to greater numbers of reports. Because it is possible that both can happen. It's also possible that both can be true. No research has shown yet whether or not the increasing number of cases before the court is as a result of the increasing occurrence. However, in 2018, we can, based on the Women's Health and Life Experiences study, the prevalence for sexual abuse outside of the numbers that were cited in the introduction to the program, we noted that 23% of the women in Grenada stated that they had experienced some form of sexual violence by a non-intimate partner. And that 20.5% of them were experienced sexual abuse as a child. That's 1/5 of the Grenadian female population experiencing sexual violence as a child in their lifetime. So it doesn't mean per year, but in their lifetime. So we know the prevalence is high. We also know that underreporting is high. The very same study shows that the number of persons who report officially to the police and so on is just a small fraction of the number of experiences that they had. So we do hope for increasing reporting, but we also work towards reducing the number of incidents over time.
And I'm going to bring in Anel. Anel, welcome to the Bub Report this week. Welcome. First of all, I want to begin by getting a sense from you as to, first and foremost, why you got involved in this work, why you felt this work was important. Are you seeing trends in your community that are also disturbing?
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bob, for inviting me here. And hi to the viewers on Facebook and YouTube. I am here in my capacity as a Grenadian woman. From what the guests have said so far, we can hear that it's a serious problem in Grenada. If you look Grenada, we are there. Oh, we have the best carnival. You search Grenada, best carnival, lovely beaches. But on there, you'll also see Grenada on the top countries with high sexual crime against women. I'm a Grenadian woman in Grenada. I have family. I have female friends. And I'm not exempted from having to be a victim one day of sexual crimes. And the sexual crimes as angry about is not just rape and attempted rape, but I also want to include inappropriate touching. Women in Grenada, we can't walk the streets without a man describing what they want to do to you, and we are accepting that. We are treating it like a norm, but it's not okay. And I don't like whenever you step out of your house, you have to be prepared to deal with things like that. I'm here as a Grenadian woman affected by those things, and as we heard them, they're saying, okay, it's high, and it's even more disturbing because among the rape issues, the sexual crimes, it seems like it's even worse among the younger children. It's like as a young child, I'm more likely to be sexually assaulted than a grown woman, and it's a huge problem. It's very disturbing, very, very disturbing. And I was reading and I saw that 67% of Grenadians did not report a crime that they experienced, and 65% of them cited the reason for that is because they feel like it won't help. And I firmly believe that there are a lot of people, women out there who are abused, and most of them don't say anything until adulthood, because from the internet I see women in their 50s, they're coming out and they're saying, this is what happened to me. And because Grenada is such a poor, we're a poor country, and a lot of these women and girls, they're dependent on that male. They feel guilty, they're afraid. If I say something, what would happen? Who would take care of us? Who would feed us? So I believe that response should also include what support do I get when I reveal this? Because if revealing this would mean I have to suffer, then I wouldn't say anything. So yes, you're citing, okay, it's a problem. I want to discuss what are we going to do about this problem. We see Esther's picture there. Her picture did not have to be there, but it's there, and we're just waiting. We're not proactive at all. We have child months, we have these marches, but they're all like gimmicks. They're all tokenism. No real action is being taken at all. And I'm here as a Grenadian woman. I'm upset. I mean, it's a disgusting situation. I don't want to come here and sound nice and proper speaking about an absolutely disgusting situation that we have to deal with as women in Grenada. Can you hear me, Dr. Bob?
All right, viewers and listeners, please stand by. We were having some technical issues on our end. Ms. Phillip, go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now. Go right ahead.
I'm not sure where did it cut off from.
Well, you were talking about that culture of violence.
Yeah, so we have this culture of violence, and we became tolerant. Like, it's okay, it's just part of the culture, it's just how Grenadian men are, but it's not okay when a woman step outside. They don't have to deal with that. And I would also extend that conversation pertaining to young teenagers. Now I see everyone notice the high prevalence of teenage girls now being involved with older men. And yes, the law is failing us. However, as a Grenadian society, I believe we could also address that situation. We are at a point where grown adult men feel comfortable enough being outside with their 15-year-old girlfriends, their 14-year-old girlfriends, and we consider them quote unquote bad, and we're minding our business. But I believe it's our responsibility to protect those girls as well. And this conversation should include that situation as well that we're having in Grenada that's growing, it's increasing. They talk about the penalties 30 years if you get involved in that, but can we see what were the penalties handed down to persons who were involved in things like that? I looked at right along, and there was this young girl. She was sexually assaulted by a close family member. She became pregnant. Nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And so when we see that, we feel the law is failing persons. And what's the support that they get? Because if that young girl is in a home with a man who is assaulting her, they are afraid, they're guilty to say anything, because what would happen? Because speaking up means that I am also punished. Because if my family is financially dependent and I say something, what would happen to my younger siblings? So sometimes they
Yeah.
feel like they also have to be the scapegoat in that family to tolerate it. And most times we see them waiting until they're older to deal with it. And when those things are revealed as well, another issue I have, as a society in Grenada, we look at it as talk, as gossip. People feel ashamed, they feel dirty, they don't want to say anything because more attention is placed on that girl rather than that man who assaulted the girl. And we ostracize people for being homosexual more than we ostracize men who are sexually assaulting young girls, children, and all of that. And we're not here to song nice. Oh, we acknowledge it's a problem. What are we doing about that problem? So as a
Absolutely.
Grenadian woman, I mean, I'm not exempted from having to deal with that. One day I could also be a victim.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so it's a disgusting situation. Let's call it what it is. And we
Yeah.
shouldn't tolerate it. We shouldn't have to be dealing with that at
Absolutely.
all.
Yeah. Miss McQueen, I'm going to bring you back here. And based on what Miss Phillip just articulated here, do you believe that there is this a cultural issue that that Miss McQueen is pointing to here in respect of that tendency to just be misogynistic against women, and the blaming the victim, not only women but minors. We're talking about minors here. I want us to appreciate that this affects disproportionately a lot of minors, a lot of young women in Grenada, a lot of children, teenage girls are being traumatized in their homes, in their communities.
Yes, Dr. Bob, and I really thank Ms. Phillip for highlighting this issue. It is a cultural issue. It is a problem in the culture. We tolerate and normalize sexual violence against women and girls to the extent that we do blame victims, we do find excuses for the offenders. So, just to take it a little further, we recognize that sexual violence is so very prevalent in Grenada and in many parts of the world, actually, that we spend a lot of time and effort to give advice to women and girls about how not to be attacked, instead of giving advice to men and boys about not attacking women and girls, right?
Hmm.
For example, we say things to women and girls like, don't go out alone, especially at night or if it's in a dismal area. Don't walk the street alone. Don't live in your house alone. Right? Even, and it doesn't matter the age range, including up to older women, retirees, especially in their 70s. We seek to blame her if somebody breaks into her house where she lives alone and attacks her. Why doesn't she have a company, we say? Right? We say things like cover up our bodies, hold our keys and other things that we can use as weapons to defend ourselves if we're traveling through a parking lot. Things like learning self-defense, things like do not leave drinks exposed. A lot of advice. Don't even, park in certain places. Now, on the other hand, we provide excuses for men and boys. But just to take this a little further, and what is the impact of this problem, this culture of violence against women and girls? It, it leaves us with a heightened alertness all of the time. And this heightened sense of alertness and fear definitely is not good for our mental health, right? We cannot live normal lives because we have to be looking over our shoulders all of the time, right? Another thing is that it restricts women's rights and girls' rights to freedom of movement in their country, in their space, even in their household, right? We also open the door for blaming the victim if she is attacked, and that aligns with helping her or opening the door for her to feel ashamed if she is attacked. So instead of feeling that I was wronged and I need to do something about it, the quote unquote gut instinct is I did something wrong. I allowed myself to be abused. And therefore, I should feel ashamed and cover it up, hide it so that no one will hear about it. And that speaks to that culture of gossip and secrecy and so on that goes around.
Mhm, mhm.
And all,
And Mr. Charles articulated that as well. Ms.
yes,
Phillips, sorry, articulated that as well.
she did.
Go ahead.
And it also means that children are not allowed to be children. Girls are not allowed to be girls. You know, they cannot play without being afraid. They cannot run errands without being at risk. They cannot learn um, netball and go to choir practice and so on, simply because if they have to go back home alone in the evening, they're at risk. They cannot
Mhm,
be left alone in their own house, in their home, because somebody in their home could be attacking them. Children cannot be children. And what kind of society is that? Now, all of that is happening within the context, though, of patriarchy, this context of gender inequality that says that men and boys have control and power and can exercise that power and control over women and girls, including through the use of violence.
mhm, mhm.
It also says that women's bodies and the bodies of girls are there, they exist for the pleasure and satisfaction of men and boys. Not that their bodies belong to them and exist for their own benefit and the good of the world and the society and so on, but for the benefit and pleasure of men and boys. And of course, this culture of gender inequality is very, it's a traditional thing that we have to address, and it leads to a lot of problems in our society.
Absolutely, and Mr. Pinnock, I'm going to bring you back here because, of course, as the prosecutorial arm of the state, you are the ones who are left to pick up the prosecutorial slack, if it were. I do remember a retired magistrate when I spoke to him off the record a couple months ago. He indicated that he was very disturbed by the amount of sexual related crimes involving minors that were coming before the court. He expressed concern about the prosecution of these matters. Now, in looking at the data, let us get into the weeds a little bit, shall we, in respect of the data, because I do know that there are differences with types of sexual crimes that we have on the books that are prosecuted. So there might be differences in respect of whether there is indecent assault, I believe, is the charge, versus rape. And I believe there is another offense. So could you talk about the range of sexual crime offenses that you have on the books?
Okay, and of course, I would appreciate a little time to respond to a few things Ms.
Sure.
Phillips said in terms
Yes,
of this system.
absolutely.
The system, she made some allegation that the system is failing. The law is it is failing. Now, Dr. Bob, we do have a range, quite a wide spectrum of sexual offences on the books, ranging from those that attach a maximum penalty of 30 years, that would be rape and incest, and sexual intercourse with a child under the age of 13. All those attract a penalty of 30 years imprisonment. And the least being indecent assault, which attracts a maximum penalty of 10 years. And we also have an offense of sexual assault. And this really is when you use an instrument or your finger and you insert it in the genital organ of a victim. So that qualifies as sexual assault. This was an offense introduced in 2012 when the criminal code was amended. So essentially, those are the more prevalent of the sexual offenses that we do prosecute here in Grenada. And I want to respond to some things that Ms. Phillip would have mentioned. No, I'm not here to pretend that the criminal justice system is perfect. Dr. Bob, there is no perfect criminal justice system in the world. Okay, we do have our issues here in Grenada, but we don't often hear of the success stories. I don't have the statistics now, but I can say from my association at the EPP Chambers here in 2006, we have had over 80% conviction rate in sexual offenses, and it may very well be much higher than that. So I'm just speaking off the top of my head. And in terms of sentencing, Dr. Bob, I can't comment too much on that because sentencing is strictly a matter for the magistrate or the judge. But they are guided now by sentencing guidelines. And sometimes the public hear of a sentence in a particular matter and they are not happy, but they are not aware that there's a process and there's a procedure. The magistrate or the judge can't do what they please. And we have had really good sentences. In fact, in the last session, we had a young man who was convicted for raping a 7-year-old, and he got 15 years imprisonment. Now, the public might hear, Dr. Bob, oh, how could rape be 30 years and this young man gets 15 years? That is not a good sentence. But they are not aware that the judge has to take into consideration a number of factors. Does the defendant, now convicted man, does he have any criminal record? They have to look at a wide range of factors, and they have to be guided by sentencing guidelines. And so they can't go outside of that. So I'm saying a lot of we don't necessarily hear the success stories. And I want to say as well, Dr. Bob, when Mrs. Henry McQueen speaks of culture, because as a prosecutor, one of the very, very disturbing things is at the end of the day, these persons, those who don't accept responsibility, that is, those who don't plead guilty, they have to be tried by a jury if it's a high court matter. And it's down to a jury to decide that they are guilty or whether they are innocent. And at some stage in that process, Dr. Bob, the jury, they are permitted to ask questions. And one of the things that disturb is that the jury, there is almost the jury seems to believe that persons who are violated sexually, they are to react or behave in a certain way. Okay, so the jury, when the time comes for them to ask questions, they might say, oh, why didn't you run? Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you fight up? And those things are very, very disturbing because they don't understand. And I always say to the jury, who are the ones who are going to decide guilt or innocence, you have to put yourself in the place of the victim. You can't sit in an air-conditioned courtroom and be judging and say, oh, I would have done this or I would have done that. They truly don't. And as a society, we truly don't understand the psychology of the victims. So I always say to them, it is so wrong. You can't say to the victims that, why didn't you scream? Why didn't you make a report to someone immediately? Because you do not know how these persons truly behave, how it affects them. So certainly it seems to me that there is a serious cultural element and it affects us in prosecutions because we have had excellent cases. And I always, Dr. Bob, tell the jury, go back to this. I don't know if you're familiar with the biblical story of Amnon and Tamar. This is the young lady who was raped by her brother. And the biblical account says that she remained desolate in her brother's house. She could not tell her brother about it. Her brother actually saw her crying and behaving in a certain manner, and he started to question her. And I raised the story to say, as Mrs. McQueen would have said just now, that the majority, what we're seeing here in Grenada, is that the majority of the sexual offenses take place within a certain circle. It's an intimate circle. It is not strangers. Over 90%, perhaps 95% of the cases that we prosecute. And as I reflect over the 17 years or so I've been in chamber, it's mostly within within the village, within a stepfather, it's very, very close. It's a very, very close circle, family circle. And so and this is one of the things too that highlights why it is so difficult for the victims to come forward in the first place and to talk about it.
Yes, Ms. Phillip, I wanted to give a chance to respond to what the Crown Counsel just said here in respect of, because I know that is a frustration that Grenadians have, right? So when, for example, in the case of the gruesome murder of the American couple, allegedly at the hands of 3 Grenadians, Grenadians were frustrated with sometimes the type of sentences that are meted out. They are frustrated sometimes with the fact that these men still have to get representation. Well, I always say to our people that we are operating within a constitution, and accused people still have a constitutional right to due process. So, Ms. Phillip, having said that, what are some of the frustrations that you have as you articulated in respect of the law? and their failure to protect boys and girls.
Well, I am definitely one of those who are frustrated, and it just seems like we need reform, because in the international community, at times when we hear something devastating happen, you hear a law, being introduced in the name of that person. So
Mm-hmm.
why can't we obviously recognize this is a trend. We can why can't we have reform and have this law? Because probably the leniency in the law is a reason why men feel so comfortable raping, and in cases with the younger teens who are like 15, 16, they feel comfortable being out and about with those little girls. Why conductors are so comfortable in the day playing and giggling and hugging up a school child in their uniform? How did we reach that point where they feel so comfortable? And can I question, if the law was exercised in its full force and the penalty was strict, would that help in a manner? Would that help the situation and reduce the situation? Even though I do understand that addressing the situation is more than just the law enforcement. It also has to be approached from the community as well, because in the manners that we culture young girls and young boys, we are definitely doing a disservice to them, where we teach girls shame. Um, and that being said, I recall this video on social media where they ask young boys, if the world was ending today or something, what would you do? And the vast majority said, I'm going to rape real gal. How did we reach that point? And we're talking young boys. Where did they get that from? Why are they so comfortable on video casually saying, I'm going to rape real gal? So yes, the law enforcement, it can be enhanced, but I also put a lot of emphasis on society as well and our role in approaching the situation. We are continuing to inherit this problem rather than the culture, trying to break the culture in the manner. Teach young boys, you are not entitled to a female's body, you have to respect them. Not teaching girls to be ashamed. This can probably be even more effective than the law, because if the law becomes more strict, maybe they can even be more secret about it. However, if we approach this in the manner that we grew up these boys, you are not entitled to a woman's body. You have consent.
Yes.
Consent should be enforced. This can probably be even more effective than the law. So these two things have to couple together and
Yes.
to approach it. So I really, as I'm here, I'm really calling for and even the men, please hold your friends accountable when you see them enhancing mothers at home. If you see an adult son bringing a young girl home, tell your child, I don't stand for this. It's everyone has to come on board in order to address the situation.
And I'm going to bring back Miss McQueen here, Mrs. McQueen here, because Mrs. McQueen, one of the points you made in respect of this culture that we have in our society, where we lay down the law in respect of what we say to young girls. You should not dress this way. You should do this. You should do that. Right? In order to prevent these types of unfortunate and vile incidents happening upon them. But we never say to young boys, you need to respect girls. You need to speak up for girls when you see them being abused and violated, right? It's always this ram goat mentality, where we celebrate sexual prowess and then we call ourselves Christian societies, right? Or you see how much girl are broth, back then they call it broth, but I don't know what term that they use now, right? And so there is that culture that exists. It's as you said, men, and that's not only, I think it's a patriarchal issue. Some men just tend to see women as their sexual property that they can do anything with. So how do we get to a place where we are, shall we say, changing our approaches to educating boys and men in respect of how they should behave?
Yes. This is very, very accurate, Dr. Bob. And the link with patriarchy is clear. The link with gender inequality is clear. We have to get to a space where we can accept equality between the sexes, that women are not things, women's bodies are not objects to be used by men and boys. And that has to be for both women and men to accept. It is not only that men have to be taught that and that they have to accept it, but women also. And that would be at the core of the prevention and definitely the long term solution. The issues around the court, the problems and gaps that exist there should be addressed. And under the Spotlight Initiative, which I coordinated on behalf of the UN, we worked with Grenada, and Grenada has now come to a place where the rights of victims and girls, oh sorry, victims and survivors, predominantly women and girls, that those rights are being recognized even more. You had asked, Dr. Bob, about the rights of the offender and the rights of the accused. And yes, that has to be taken into account. All of those rights must be taken into account, but so too must we must take into account the rights of the victims and the survivors of all these forms of violence. And I just want to highlight three of the rights that were articulated under this program in victims and survivors rights policy that is before the government now for consideration. One of them is the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Another is to be kept informed. And another is the right to competent service delivery. And that service delivery is whether it is by the health sector, the social sector, by the law enforcement sector, or by the justice sector, that all of these rights, plus more, but I just wanted to highlight those three for the purposes of this conversation, that the rights of victims and survivors, and those rights extend to their families as well, where the families are sometimes threatened, right? So those rights need to be taken on board by all of the persons involved in the systems for the protection and support of victims and survivors, and indeed by the entire society. I just wanted also to highlight that and commend commend Mr. Pinnock and the team at the DPP's office for ensuring that there's approximately 80% or more conviction rate for the offenses that are brought to the High Court. I want to challenge us, though, to think about the number of cases that do not reach the High Court. And sometimes those cases fall through the cracks because the charges are not laid. Sometimes a lesser charge is laid than what is actually possible. So instead of, say, charging for rape, the charge might be indecent assault or something like that, just as a wild example. So sometimes lesser charges are laid. And sometimes those matters, then, if the lesser charge is one that can have a summary conviction, a summary at the magistrate's court, it stops there. But then we also see cases where there is settlement outside of court, sometimes with the knowledge of the court, where someone says, oh, I'm not taking the matter forward, I want to drop the charges. But the evidence suggests that an actual crime has been committed. And then when you investigate further, the statement, I want to drop the charges, is because of some quote unquote bribe or other extrajudicial agreement has come into play and allow the court with the charges to be dropped. So these are things that through the research as well under the Spotlight Initiative, these came up also as gaps in the system. Another gap that emerged also was the length of time the cases take before they get through the court system, and to a conviction or to a conclusion, whether conviction or not. So we notice that all of these combined indicate that while there might be about 80% conviction rate at the High Court, there is an untold amount perhaps a large, like very likely, a very, very large amount of cases that don't even get to the High Court. But I'm not talking about those that were not reported to the police. Those gaps I mentioned are those that were reported to the police. Sometimes get to the court, but still get
Yeah.
fall away. Yeah?
Yeah, and Mr. Pinnock, just to piggyback on what Mrs. McQueen has articulated here, there is that judicial backlog. It's a severe and systemic judicial backlog in respect of the administration of cases in communities. Now, where are we in respect? Is it that, well, obviously it's not the prosecutor's office to make a decision in respect of how to move particular cases through the system, but do judges have a priority list in respect of prioritizing how certain crimes are adjudicated over others? What does that look like, sir?
That's a very good point, Dr. Bob. The judges, and currently we have 2 judges in the High Court dealing with criminal matters,
Yeah.
and they do what you call case management, and so they manage the cases so that they try to give priority to persons on remand and to the sexual offenses, especially the older matters. So currently, I would say from my recollection, we have most of the cases we have on the list are listed and came up to the High Court in the year 2020. So we have been working very, very hard to reduce we do have a backlog. We have been working very hard to reduce the backlog. And in fact, Justice Guilford, who's the judge I prosecute before, she has taken the novel step of doing 3 trials simultaneously. So we have had case sit-ins where we actually do 3 or at least 2 cases running simultaneously. And that has really worked, because the last assizes, last sitting for last year, 2023, we had 85 cases. So for the September session of the High Court last year, which runs from September to December, we had 85 cases listed. And for the April session, which is going to start next week, Tuesday, the 9th of April, we have 79 cases listed. So we have been trending down, and certainly perhaps 2-3 years ago, we had as high as 140, 150. So I've been trending down in terms of the backlog. And the judges have been working really, really hard. But it really is a concerted effort. And I just want to jump and piggyback on what Ms. Philip would have said about community, because it really, they have had prosecutions, and certainly Mrs. Henry McLean, they have had prosecutions that were undermined because family members did not support the victim, support the child for whatever reason. So and of course it's going to take a community approach to really get to the bottom of the sexual issue that we have in Grenada. As the Africans say, it takes a village to grow a child. So it's going to be a community approach, because we sometimes have, Dr. Bob, persons in the system. We always hear this cry of, anything happens in Grenada, we want justice, we want justice. But sometimes persons, when the police want to approach them to take a statement that would assist the prosecution, they say they ain't taking part. And you can't want justice and in the same breath you ain't taking part. Because the police, Dr. Bob, the strength of the RGPF is less than 1% of the population of Grenada. And the police are not omnipresent. So it means that yes, and even Dr. Bob, you would know this, even in the more advanced countries that have forensic capabilities, there must be a human element. There's always a human element in the case that points the police to the right person. There's always a human element. So to me, it's very, very contradictory when Grenadians are saying, oh, we want justice. But when the police come, and sometimes it's not that the police require them to be in court. They might just want their help to point them in the right direction. So we definitely need the support of the community, because the police, some persons are of the view that the criminal justice system is just for the police. Crime is about the police.
Ms. Councilman, I have a follow-up question, and that has to do with bail for the most severe of criminal sexual offenses, for example, rape. Anecdotally, one of the men, well, two of the men who are now stand accused of murdering the American yachting couple in Grenada, one of them at the time was accused of rape. And that led to them being released and then inadvertently escaping from the South St. George police station and then going on to commit another rape, allegedly on the yacht. Yes? There was also the incident involving a murder of another American, I believe an American tourist on La Sagesse Beach. That person was released from prison, again accused of rape. He went on to commit rape again and led to the murder of that particular tourist on La Sagesse Beach. And so my question to you, Mr. Crown Counsel, and that may be above your pay grade in respect of what needs to be done around rape laws. Why is rape a bailable offense?
All offenses, Dr. Bob, even all offenses, even murder, are bailable offenses. This is as the law now stands in Grenada. So as you're aware, I can't comment on policy.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Yes.
Comment on the law as it now stands. But what I can say in relation to bail is that a magistrate or a judge of the High Court, they have a discretion to admit someone to bail or not. And that discretion is guided by well-established legal principles. They have to look, for example, at the record of the offender. They have to look as to whether the person is likely to recommit an offense while on bail. So a number of factors are considered, but I certainly can't comment on matters of policy. I know in some countries, bail is not a bailable offense, but here in Grenada, rape is not a bailable offense, but here in Grenada, it is a bailable offense. But as I said, the judicial officer that considers the issue of bail, there is a hearing, and the prosecution, they hear from both sides. They hear from the prosecutor who has conduct of the matter, and they also hear from defense counsel, if there's defense counsel. And we having heard the submissions from both sides, they certainly look at the law, apply the law, and they exercise that discretion one way or another.
And Ms. Phillip, I'm sure that I saw you nodding there when I posed that question. I think that aspect of the law needs to be changed. What do you think about that, Ms. Phillip? Just unmute your mic there.
Yes.
Yeah, there you are. Go ahead.
It definitely needs to change. And the worst thing about it is that when these men are bailed, sometimes they go back to the same community where the victims leave. Even though they're bailed, we could at least address that. Like, yes, you receive bail, but why are you living in the same community, a street down away from the person that you raped? That's one of the most troubling parts about it. And another thing, I don't want to totally throw the RGPF under the bus. I mean, they suffer from that too much already. So I want to kind of commend them for the steps. I have seen them taking an approach where they go into the schools now and they try to educate boys. They inform them about the law and consent. I've seen that, and I really commend them for doing that. However, because of the community's role as well, yes, we have the RGPF trying to take that steps, but as boys go back to the community and they are now being cultured around that toxic mentality. So we have resistance, even though the RGPF, they are really trying now to inform and educate boys. We have that resistance. So that is where I now reemphasize how crucial community's role is in fighting against that. Because I mean, at the end of the day, the RGPF are not the ones persecuting these rapists, of course. And I was looking at a study, and it said that 67% of Grenadians, they don't report a crime that they suffered, and out of that 63% cited that they did not report it because they feel like nothing is going to be done. And it shows how much we need reform. We losing trust. It's not me saying it. I read it in a study that was done. You can research it. So it really shows we need reform in our laws. And sometimes we see like, okay, rape is bad, but I mean, it's not murder. Rape is bad, but it's not stealing from your boss, right? So we it's a serious issue, and we
Yeah.
need to look at that, and we need the voices of those on top to also express your dissatisfaction with what's going on. Don't leave it for us at the bottom to deal with it by ourselves. Speak up about it as well, because Grenada is too small for that.
Ms. McQueen, I'll bring you back here in respect of the recommendations that need to be advanced around prison reform, sentencing reform, that is. Well, prison reform as well, because these men and women, because, boys are impacted by this as well, even though our society may not talk about it. Rehabilitation is important there, but let us talk first and foremost about what you're hoping to see. What recommendations have you made coming out of your research around how we can tweak the current sentencing guidelines around all sexual offenses? And I don't want to put indecent assault and rape as saying one is minor and one is major, but to me, it's all a violation. This is how I see it. A woman or a man is violated. A child is violated in that context. So let us talk about your recommendations or things that you would like to see around those sentencing guidelines that we currently have.
So, under the Grenada Spotlight Initiative, the UN agencies worked with the government of Grenada and with civil society to do quite a number of things. And just broadly, before I zoom in on the specific question,
Yes.
we were able to provide some research, such as to do a comparative analysis of the laws of Grenada, and also do a knowledge, attitudes, and behavior study on the access to justice in Grenada, which actually speaks quite a lot to and answers some of the questions which Ms. Phillip raised around reasons why people do not access justice in Grenada, not feeling that things would be done and so on. Having experience of that, enough wasn't done about it.
Yeah.
We also made recommendations then coming out of that research, and those recommendations came in the form of draft bills and draft policies and the standard operating procedures. Now, the draft bills and policies are for consideration further by the state and civil society to take forward, and this is where I would encourage the country, all of the people in Grenada, to continue to support the government and for the work that Ms. Phillip and team and so are doing to continue to advocate for those bills and policies to come to be passed and put into force. We also provided equipment and tools to allow certain things to happen, such as in-camera proceedings and the use of medical legal evidence in the court. And we also did an intensive round of training for several service providers from the police, the court, and social care and health providers on how to respond to victims and survivors. So a range of things were done. We hope that they would be sustained. We encourage this sustainability. Now, in relation to the specific gaps, in the legislation and so on, one of the things that is recommended is to update the Criminal Procedure Code to reduce the amount of time that a matter spends in court. So, for example, not introducing, but more widely practicing the use of paper committals from the magistrates court to the high court, to introduce victim protection legislation and enact and put into force victim protection legislation, such as keeping the victims and the offenders in separate locations as they await the trial to start. For example, everybody gets summons. Do the offenders, in this case, the accused, do the accused and their team sit in the same space with the witnesses and especially the victim who is treated as a witness in this case. How do we treat with them, and do we allow for re-traumatizing? You spoke about the sentencing reform, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Legal Affairs, the Attorney General's office, there has been discussion about working with the the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court to revise the sentencing procedures. Because on this particular matter, it is not only Grenada, but it's because, especially for all of the courts, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court is the governing body for the judicial system. And so the sentencing guidelines need to be revised, but the Attorney General's office advised that they would like to take that up with the OCA Supreme Court. And because some of the things that are being considered now, for example, Mr. Pinnock mentioned some of them. Was there a previous offense committed, a previous conviction? In the context that so many cases go unreported, how do you measure whether a previous offense was committed, right? In the context of extrajudicial settlements, whether for goods or money, for example, do you allow a case to be dropped, even if somebody says, we want a case dropped? So these are things that need to be taken up, and recommendations have been made about addressing those issues. But some specific recommendations and action need to happen with the full advisement and involvement of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in this matter, right? There is also discussion on the table and being considered by the Attorney General's office about establishing a family court and a sexual offenses court. Because if those are put into place, the current backlog would cease to a major extent, because there would be, currently what happens is certain days are set aside as family days, and that works out to be about 1 day per month in the courts, right? Including the magistrates court. Well, especially the magistrates court, I should say. And this is insufficient because the studies indicate that the majority of the cases before the magistrates court are cases of a domestic matter, family violence and so on, and sexual violence. And if that's the majority of the cases, but they are dealt with 1 day per month in a particular parish, for example, it means that the victims have to wait and wait and wait. And sometimes adjournments, we're told, based on the studies, adjournments are used to the benefit of the accused, not to the benefit of the victim, all right? So all of these are matters that the government of Grenada, especially through the Attorney General's office and the Ministry of Gender Affairs, have received these recommendations, and they have given the commitment to examine them and take them forward as is necessary. And of course, based on the further work that needs to be done with the the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court where necessary.
And that, I think, is such a critical element of this, because as Ms. Philip articulated, sometimes these predators, these perpetrators, they go back into the communities, they re-traumatize, and sometimes they go back into the very homes where these children are located. It's not only the community. And so it's not like in the United States where you have something like a predators list that, okay, these people are sex offenders, and so you have to keep a certain distance. Given the geography of Grenada, that sometimes is very difficult to execute. Yeah. So, Ms. Philip, any thoughts on some of the proposals that Ms. McQueen has just articulated?
Well, I'm just pleased to hear that she mentioned reforms to protect the victims and not just the protection of the perpetrators. So that's satisfying to her. It's satisfying. And as the law, as they do their role, I also call on the community as well. Let's not make these men feel comfortable doing what they do. We have to make
Yeah.
them uncomfortable so they'll stop. They'll see how it's wrong and they don't have the support of us. Sometimes we know these men are predators and we're still friends with them, we're still laughing with them, supporting them. I would never. Right? They feel
Yeah.
comfortable. That's it. Because we don't hold them accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. Folks, we are going to take a quick break and come back for wrap-up comments. This is a very important conversation that needs to be had, not only when unfortunate high-profile incidents occur, but these incidents are occurring very frequently in our societies, in our communities, and sometimes, given the nature of how secretive we can be as a Grenadian society, some of it does not get reported, but it's embedded within the cultural body politic of Grenada, and it is extremely concerning, and we need to have those very important conversations. So, viewers and listeners, please stand by. We will come up for air, and then we'll come back to close this segment.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah. Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bub Report. We go there.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
Hello everyone, I am Chantal McGuire, your local bred Grenadian actuary and asset liability management expert. Are you satisfied with your current finances? Are you curious and constantly looking for ways to make additional income? Join me on the Bub Report as we strive to empower you, our valued audience, to become more financially literate and help evolve Grenadians into a mindset that's investment focused and entrepreneurial. Literacy is about freedom. It's about being able to control your money and not letting your money control you. It's about foresight for a brighter future. Our core mission is to promote financial literacy and share money-generating opportunities for everyone. Join us on the last Sunday of every month, starting July 30th, as we strive to provide the keys to financial freedom.
Listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I would say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Pei, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Pei? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC to do this poll?
Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop at that. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. We've always aspired to do better. We've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be Queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can't pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
You must. Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that worked for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, I'm not just. My wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run an election, to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call, and you say, we want to win an election, so let's come together now.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's episode of the Bub Report. Now, we do have some breaking news coming in from the Diocese of St. George's in Grenada. That's Bishop Clyde Harvey. Bishop Clyde Harvey announced at Father Gerard Paul's parish in St. Patrick that Father Gerard Paul would be suspended from priestly duties. Of course, this announcement by Bishop Harvey has come on the heels of the unscripted rebuke that Father Gerard Paul delivered at the Mass of the Chrism at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception during Holy Week, in which he chided the Roman Catholic Church for not being as vocal as they should be in respect of the plight of the people of Palestine that are now undergoing a barrage of bombs and starvation as a result of the October 7th attacks that was leveled by the Hamas group on Israeli civilians. Of course, that is an ongoing conflict. Father Gerard Paul spoke with great conviction on that matter. And of course, at the time, Bishop Harvey described it as a diatribe. And he indicated that he would be seeking advice in respect of how to proceed with a sanction against Father Gerard Paul, which he has now articulated in a Sunday service up there in the parish where Father Gerard Paul practices Mass in St. Patrick. So that is news that we have coming in. For those of you who have been following this story, of course, we were able to get a clip of what Father Gerard Paul said before the Catholic Church deleted the video, removed that particular statement, and then re-uploaded it without Father Gerard Paul's statement in it. We here at the Bub Report were the ones who were able to capture that clipping before it was deleted from their system. That is the Good News Catholic Communication Television. But that's the update we have. We are going to endeavor to get Bishop Harvey to appear on the Bub Report at some point to discuss the basis for his decision. So that is the news we have coming in from St. Patrick this morning, folks. All right, folks, now we're going to get to some final closing comments from our guests. This has been a very important conversation, and it's a conversation that we need to continue to have in respect of the state of gender-based violence in Grenada. So, Ms. Phillip, I will begin with you. It's such a pleasure having you here, ma'am. I do hope that you can come back on the Bub Report whenever we're having those conversations again, because I believe your input is extremely valuable. So please, over to you for some closing comments.
It was an honor being here, and I also applaud the viewers because I'm sure their presence here means that they also care about this topic. It's important to address this so we can have a safe Grenada for all women. And also to these men who know that they're guilty of interfering with some child, stop. I'm speaking to you, stop. Because no one should suffer because a man chooses to be selfish and refuse to control himself. No one should suffer for that. And also, I don't want to have a conversation, then we move on and put it behind us. So I'm inviting everyone, every viewer now and later on, to take up the charge to assume our roles in protecting women in society. And I propose Friday is a day that we wear pink to show our support for women and our dissatisfaction with men who are engaging in that sexual crimes against women. So viewers, I invite you, share it. So let them know that we're here and we care and we're not okay with it.
Absolutely, Ms. Phillip. Thank you so very much. Mrs. McQueen, over to you for some final comments.
Thank you, Dr. Bob, for having me on the program, and I thank the co-panelists for sharing so freely.
Yes.
To you, when I say we here, we're speaking here about the UN system that participated with the government and the civil society in the Spotlight Initiative. Just want to say a few words on their behalf. Now, those agencies were PAHO, UN Women, UNICEF, and UNDP, supported by the Resident Coordinator's Office of the UN and with funding from the European Union. And we were pleased to be able to work along with the government of Grenada and the CSOs on this program, the Grenada Spotlight Initiative. We commend the government and civil society for the steps that they have taken so far, and we look forward to their continued action, and especially for translating those commitments into real change that would affect the lives of the women and girls throughout the communities. We also encourage the enforcement of the SOPs and so on, because the enacting laws and policies can't just stop there and don't make change. The actual change comes with the enforcement by all of the necessary persons involved. To all of us in the Grenadian society, men, women, and children, we ask us to protect and support victims. Stop blaming them. Protect and support the victims. We ask us all to teach men and boys to respect women and girls and be nonviolent. Also respect men and boys. Remember that, because it's everyone in this. Let us all respect the human rights of everyone else. And of course, live in a way that is respectful and dignified, for our own selves. We also need to treat sexual violence as criminal acts to be brought to court, to law enforcement, and to seek justice for. For too long, the society has been covering up sexual violence, has been, quote unquote, forgiving the offenders and hoping for rehabilitation. It is time to treat them for what they are. They are criminal acts, and law enforcement and the justice system needs to come into play. So let us do what is necessary to ensure that sexual violence can stop. We encourage the community to practice healthy gender norms and so reach to a stage of gender equality. Now, the UN agencies and the partners with government and civil society will continue to support the government and civil society and the people of Grenada in this thrust. And so we encourage us all to strive for better, strive for more peaceful and harmonious societies, but not the kind of harmony where we keep bad things in secret, the kind of harmony where we uncover those evils, deal with them, and wipe them out from our society. Let us work all together, work for better, so that we can have a better Grenada. CARIFTA Games. Thank you.
And last but by no means least, Crown Counsel Pinnock, I do know that you are an extremely busy man, sir, given your role in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And in our conversations, you said you were working some late nights. And, so I do appreciate the work that you're doing, sir. Again, the law enforcement authorities in Grenada have come in for heavy beating recently, but I also think it's important to highlight some of the positive work that they're doing, and important to highlight the work of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. But before we get to you for some final comments, sir, there are two public interest issues that I want to raise with you, which we discussed before, and those two public interest issues has to do with the gun amnesty that is being proposed by the government of Grenada that received legislative teeth. That's one, recently, and two has to do with the issue of now an American lawyer, an American criminal defense attorney, appeared on a Law and Order crime show in the United States, in which he was making claims that the men accused of the Ralph Hendry and Cathy Brandel murder in Grenada could possibly face extradition and trial in the United States for their alleged murders. And the impression that he has given is that perhaps the FBI has some kind of jurisdictional stake and interest in how this case unfolds. So I want you to articulate, sir, what is the jurisdictional basis for the United States getting involved in this matter in which American citizens are involved?
Dr. Bob, I will be, of course, very guarded in what I say, because
of course, yes, because it's sub judice. Yes.
Yes, this matter is currently before the court. So
yes, sir.
as a matter of law, we are limited as to what we can say. And additionally, the director himself has conduct of this particular prosecution. But what I would say is, if in such cases, what if the United States has jurisdiction, what they would do is they would make an extradition request to the appropriate authority here in Grenada, which would be the Attorney General. As far as I'm aware, there has been no extradition request so far. Okay. When a requesting state makes an extradition request, they have to outline the legal basis on which they claim jurisdiction. And I'm at a disadvantage in that I've not heard this program, I've not heard this particular individual, what he had to say. But what I will say is we have not received any extradition requests from the United States. And if and when they do, they of course would have to outline what is the legal basis on which they have jurisdiction. But what I can say as a matter of fact, the matter is presently before the courts here in Grenada, because we have undoubtedly have jurisdiction.
Because they based on the determination, based on what was said, at least, that allegedly these crimes would have happened within Grenadian territory, and therefore Grenada has jurisdiction over the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
absolutely. And the criminal, our criminal code gives us vast jurisdiction in Grenada, because it happened in Grenada and based on the investigation. And I don't want to go any further than that. It happened.
No, of course,
Grenada.
no, absolutely. So, but I just want to educate our audience, because this particular video went viral, and the way that this, and I'm going to send this over to you, the way that the attorney spoke was as if, there is an ironclad sure-fit basis for wanting the case to be tried in the United States as well. And I know that the case is not even making its way through the judicial process as yet, right? So they've had their preliminary hearing, as I know. But and on the second matter of the gun amnesty, the firearm amnesty that the government is attempting to put in place, any comments on that in your experience? Have you seen such amnesties in the past, and how do you think that can assist with a criminal prosecution and keeping illegal guns at bay in the state?
Dr. Bob, you don't expect me to speak on a matter of policy.
I'm aware of that, but I'm sure you can speak in general terms of
what I can say based on the statistics is that there certainly we had, and the RGPF, their statistics reveal that we have had just about 137 cases of possession of firearm between 2009 to 24. So there seems to be a spike, certainly between 2022 to 2023, because in 2022 we had reported 34 charges actually were laid for possession of firearm, and that increased in 2023 to 54. So there has been an incremental increase in Grenada in firearm offenses. So those who make policy, they certainly have not been inactive when it comes on to that trend. So I can't, as you're well aware, I can't speak on policy and policy implications. I can only speak on certainly on the law.
Absolutely. And Mr. Pinnock, thank you so very much. And over to you for some final comments, sir. We're glad to have you here today.
Yes, I just want to express thanks again to you and to your viewers. And I would say that as we celebrated 50 years as a nation, and Ms. Phillip and Mrs. McKean would have spoken about it, it's going to be a community effort to deal with this issue of sexual violence, because it has deep roots in Grenadian society. So it is going to take a total community effort. There's need for reform, of course, both in terms of the legal aspects of continuing to combat the issue. And as you know, we react to when offenses do occur. So it's going to take reform, it's going to take a concerted community effort, and we all have to work together to make Grenada certainly a safer place. I do salute Ms. Phillips. She spoke with a lot of passion. We at the DPP's chambers, we are also very passionate about our job and in terms of getting justice for those who are the victims of crime, particularly sexual offenses.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Yes, go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Sorry for that
Yes,
technical
I was
glitch.
saying, Dr. Bob, that we do perform our duties with a lot of commitment and passion because we care deeply. We don't see these matters. I know you had asked me to compile some statistics, but we don't see these cases as statistics. We are dealing with human beings, with people's lives who have been, in many cases shattered. So we do care, and we see the need for reform to make the system go a little faster. Because as you know, Dr. Bob, we have victims. One of the unfortunate things in Grenada, victims usually have to go through a two-tier process. You have a preliminary hearing, then you have a trial in the High Court. And Mrs. McQueen spoke about, we have to consider whether we are going to go the way of having a paper committal process. So victims don't have to be taking the stand, giving evidence twice. So we are concerned that we really have need for reform, and we really hope that going forward as a nation, all our citizens can come on board, because there must be a need to maintain confidence in the criminal justice system. And as Ms. Phillips spoke, if confidence diminishes or declines, then we are going to have a problem. So we have a need to work together with all the stakeholders to ensure, and it starts we always say charity begins at home. It starts at home. The parents have to really step up to their responsibilities, safeguard their children. One of the issues I noticed in Grenada too, it is a very trusting society. And in many cases, that trust is abused, is broken, is betrayed. So the parents, we have to come together and see how we can just work together to make the society and make our children safer. Thank you so much.
Mr. Pinnock, on that note, thank you so very much. We will be certainly calling on you again and your expertise on these matters. Mrs. McQueen, thank you for accepting the invitation, as well as Miss Phillip. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers and listeners, this brings us to the end of our panel segment of the week. We're going to take one final break and come back with a wonderful conversation that we had with Grenadian athlete Mr. Lyndon Victor. We actually did a pre-recorded interview with Mr. Victor because Sunday is his church day, and we did not want to take up his Sunday, but he did agree to sit with us to offer his reflections on the just concluded CARIFTA Games that was held in St. George's, the 51st edition of the CARIFTA Games, in which Team Grenada on their home turf gave a good account of themselves. So we're going to take one final break, and we're going to tee up that interview, which will be the final segment of this week's Bub Report. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Now, at the conclusion of last week's CARIFTA Games in Grenada, controversy ensued in the final event of the track and field championships. The Under-20 boys relay, typically a heart-stopping finale, descended into confusion as a supposed second starter's pistol, or what some thought was a second one, halted three teams mid-race. Now, Jamaica, unfazed by that distraction, continued the race to a seemingly comfortable victory. The Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, along with Antigua and Barbuda, stopped running after leaving the blocks and hearing the second gunshot. But Grenada, Guyana, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines continued the race to the finish. Now, despite the Grenadian crowd's loud pleas to stop the race, officials allowed the full 4x400 meter relay to continue, even after the first exchange. The trio that stopped was granted a second chance, which was a timed final run. Now, while Trinidad and Tobago pushed forward and came close to Jamaica's final time, they were unable to overpower Team Jamaica for that final result. Team Bahamas, initially awarded bronze, were later disqualified due to a lane violation, handing Guyana a third-place medal. Grenada was also expected to medal in that race. Now, despite what many observers saw as a bizarre ending, Grenada's World Athletic Champion, Lyndon Victor, our next guest, came out running with a pep talk for Team Grenada on his social media page. Victor said, quote, "In my opinion, we must not allow one mistake to overshadow the fact that our Grenadian athletes competed with the hearts of champions. It was an absolute joy watching their performances. To the volunteers, you are the real MVPs, true patriots. I know that being a volunteer is not an easy task, but there will be no sports without you. So as a Grenadian, I say thank you," unquote. And we're happy to be joined now by World Athletic Champion, Mr. Lyndon Victor. Mr. Victor, welcome to the Bub Report.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. I do want to say first and foremost that I know that you are busy training right now, so I'm very happy that you've taken the time to be with us. I do know that training has been hectic as we were having that conversation. You said you were training, so I do appreciate the time, sir, that you're taking to spend with us. But I felt as if, Lyndon, it was important to invite you to the Bub Report this week because you struck a very positive note, considering that that final race overshadowed what was a successful weekend for Team Grenada in CARIFTA. I know that you were on the ground in Grenada for CARIFTA, and so for starters, what were some of the takeaways and learns that you took away from this year's CARIFTA Games?
I think first of all, the Grenadian public must be commended on hosting and I'm looking for the right word. I don't want to say excellent, but you guys showed Grenadian hospitality, during the whole CARIFTA Games. There was no incident of, let's say, no robbery, nobody getting hurt, nobody getting kidnapped, like nothing like that. And I know in some countries, people use that as opportunities to scam people. So I must commend the Grenadian public on their hospitality and bringing not just the Caribbean, but there was a lot of international world athletics people from all over the world in Grenada over that weekend. And I think we did an excellent job showing them how good the Grenadian public is.
That Grenadian hospitality that we are known for. That's it. That hospitality that we're known for. Now, in respect of the performance of the CARIFTA team, your observations, because I understand you were on the ground at the stadium for the entirety of the games. So, what are some of the observations you made coming out of the games about the team?
Well, I think our athletes' performance is a reflection of our coaching in Grenada, whether you want to believe that or not. And for us to compete the way we did, especially in the running events, before a lot of the times, if Grenadians made the finals, it was a big thing in the running events in particular. But we know what we know what we do in the throws and the multis, but to see us running and competing and winning medals in the 400 and being in the finals, we had two guys in the finals in the 100 meters. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of Grenada. I could be wrong, but having two guys in the finals, I think the team competed really well. The athletes competed extraordinary, and I think that's one, because of the support from the home crowd. Like, I feel you could see the athletes had an extra push. Coming home, a lot of the races were won coming home, even though they were in the back. But when they heard the Grenadian roar, it's not the same raw that you get at Intercall, because you get like a GBSS raw or like a SAS raw. But when you coming home, you getting a Grenadian raw, and you could see it propel the athletes. Where they would have finished fourth, it propelled them to third. Where they would have finished third, it propelled them to second.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't remember the last time I was on my feet standing like with excitement for a track meet. That probably has never ever happened in my entire life. So the athletes and the coaches, I think our coaches are getting to the level where we can see our athletes' development, and I think this bodes good for the future of athletics in Grenada.
Yeah. How did it feel being on the other side, knowing that you were once a CARIFTA athlete, watching the athletes and cheering the athletes on from the sidelines? How did that feel?
It felt, I understand better that when the passion that comes as athletics fans, because I too shared disappointments, and I too shared excitement.
Yeah.
I was a civilian, I was a fan, I was a spectator, and I must say, it brought out a different side of me, and I enjoyed it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, in looking at Team Grenada, and you did mention the coaches. Were there any standout athletes for you that you saw in the context of this CARIFTA Games that you felt does have that potential to represent Grenada as senior athletes in other meets, whether it's the Diamond League, whether it's the Penn Relays, World Championships, Olympics, things like that?
You just never know, because we have had a lot of CARIFTA medalists and stuff before. So you can't just pinpoint one athlete and say, okay, well, this athlete is going to be our next Olympian or whatever. I think they all have that potential, believe it or not.
Right.
If I could single out one guy, I think our triple jump guy. I didn't know he was that big. I met him in person. He won the gold. I think there's one thing that if there's one thing I'm disappointed about, is why are these athletes not, why am I on the show and not one of these athletes? Our athletes, they went out there, but I haven't seen them done any radio interviews, any TV interviews, any sit down to figure out exactly what we could have done an interview with the 4x4.
Where with the actual team, what happened there?
What happened, but I feel like no, the CARIFTA is done, and
it's as though people are moving on to the next thing, right?
But I think get them into shows and get them into programs to understand what it was like.
That is definitely a challenge we are going to take up. That's a very important point you make. Yes, we need to hear from the athletes, because they represented the country. They represented Grenada.
Exactly. And I think that it might spark something in them to want to propel their career. But if they celebrate them, parade them, give them an extra boost to want to propel their career forward. And this is my plea to the media. Get them all over, showcase them. Get their point of views on how the meet went, because as spectators, we only assuming.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, I'm assuming as well, because I wasn't the one competing. So talk to the guy that started off 4x4 and get his explanation of what actually happened. The guy that ended and brought us back to third place, I think. Our triple jump guy, ask him questions and his preparation. Ask him questions and as to what motivated him to win the gold. I think us as a media can do a much better job in that. And
I totally agree with you. And there is a lot that needs to be done around sports reporting in Grenada, hearing those stories from our athletes, because the other islands do a very good job of that. You look at Trinidad, you look at the Bahamas, you look at Jamaica. Some
of these athletes are already on shows on
Yeah.
And I think charity begins at home.
Yes.
If they start doing interviews here, not after they just win the race, like sit down and get to know these athletes as person. That way, when they do become Olympians and Olympic champions,
They
sitting
will
in
be
front.
ready. Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
most definitely.
Yep.
So I think that's one of my takeaways so far. And I understand that the games just finished about a week ago, but it shouldn't take that long to get them on podcasts, to get them on shows, and to get their take on what actually happened at 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 the um at the
At the
Grappling Games.
games. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Now, while you were in Grenada, you also did some because you. What I know about you, sir, is that you like giving back. If it's one thing I know about you, you are a philanthropist at heart. Maybe it's because you're from St. David's, as I am from St. David's too. I always say that. He's from St. David's. We have two World Star athletes from St. David's. I let people know that. But tell us about what you were able to do in respect of coming home to Grenada last week.
In terms of
I know you.
there's some different things that I did, so I don't want to speculate.
Yeah, so I know that there was a donation that was given, or a fund was set up.
Yeah. So one of the things, I'm a brand ambassador at the Grenadian Credit Union, and I went to
Yes.
them, and I said, let's do something for our CARIFTA team, because they are already a sponsor.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they graciously did was open savings accounts for all our medalists.
Mhm.
I think that's an overlooked part in sports. Um,
Mhm.
Having something as simple as a savings account, where if they go on and they do something, or they have a $2 and they're able to save it, I think there's a problem with financial literacy in amongst athletes. And saving is a big part of that. And I think if we can catch them early and teach them some form of financial literacy, I also know that there's other things for our medalists, in terms of we are doing a savings program for them to just help the parents in particular, because some of these athletes are going to practice and they don't even have bus money. So if they save their money, and whenever they get something, they can put it there. It might help propel them. And just another thing is, what we wanted to do was just show them a form of appreciation for what they did. um
Mhm.
they represented us really, really well. And too much times you see our CARIFTA team, they compete and they just come back home and they just sit down, and they just, like, they go back to their
The same routine.
same routine. The only thing different is that they have a medal around their neck.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they still have to struggle to pay the bus. They still have to struggle to get something to eat. And
Mhm.
it doesn't even always take financial help, like a grocery store, like something to help our athletes get to the next level. And too many
Mhm.
times, they're athletes with a lot of potential who just stop because of just appreciation. There's no appreciation in it. So Grenadian Credit Union graciously decided to open some accounts and give them a little start in
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
to help.
No, and you make a very important point there about the financial literacy piece, and it's not only athletes. You look at some. I look at some folks in the creative arts, who represented Grenada so powerfully in different areas, and they talk about financial struggles, and I'm thinking to myself, you had this great public visibility, but here, and there seems to be a disconnect with that. So that financial literacy piece, I think, is so critical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, even now it's even hard to open a bank account.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like people might see it as a simple thing, but
Yeah.
some people don't own a bank account until they get their first job.
Mhm.
Like that is so common in Grenada, that you don't have a bank account until you start to look for a job, or like some other people, they just get paid in their
Mhm.
hands, and then they just spend the money because the money is in their hands. So I think that's one of the things that the Grenadian Credit Union as a whole, we're trying to help our athletes in that. Just
Fina-
help them save, learn to save and encourage them and teach them the importance of savings. Because 10 years from now, not even 10 years, 3 years from now, when you're looking to go on to school in the US, or you trying to get a loan, or you trying to do something, like you have a history of saving. So I think that's important.
No, absolutely. Very, very important. And you continue to amplify that message, which is so important. While you were on the ground in Grenada, what else were you able to do?
So just some of the things is just me being me. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, very well. So now you are training. This is, of course, a big year for Team Grenada, and of course, all of the athletes of the Caribbean are turning their attention towards the Olympics in Paris. I'm sure you're also looking forward to the Olympics that's happening, the Summer Olympics that's happening. Yes, Grenada, it's not only Reggae Fest, okay? Summer Olympics is happening as well. So talk to us, Lyndon, about your training for the Summer Olympic Games.
Yeah, well, it's been sporadic. I would say that. But, it's been up and down. I've had some personal issues, some athletic issues, some injuries, and but all in all, it's trending upwards. It's trending upwards. So I'm excited to really focus on training and not all the other things, and just spend a good 4 months of just focus and training. And I always say this: I don't have to be ready today for the Olympics. I have to be ready for the Olympics at the Olympics,
Right.
So it doesn't matter how I feel today. I can feel great today, or I can feel bad today. All that matters is how I feel on these 2 days at the Olympics. So I'm trusting in God. I'm trusting in my faith. I'm trusting in my training, and I'm trusting in God's will for me, and just trying to stay in His will and train hard.
Is there anything you learned from your last bronze medal win that you're taking with you? Particular form issues that you might have to address, or any of those things coming up as well in this training process that you want to talk about?
We're trying some new things, some things that we learned, and some of the mistakes. My other sponsor, Huggins, bought me some new poles, and I actually started jumping with some new poles and using some newer equipment, like newer javelin and better discus. So just a lot of things. I think at this age, and as I've gotten older, it's a lot of mental and physical.
It's more mental than physical.
Yeah. It definitely is.
Yeah, and especially in athletics, age is such a major factor, right? I mean, at some point, there is always a shelf life with athletics, right? And that's something you have to take on board as well. Overall, what is Team Grenada looking like in respect of their preparation? How are you guys coalescing and coming together now as you prepare for the Olympics?
Well, I think the beauty of our team right now is, including myself, we have 3 guys who have done it, who have won medals.
Yes.
That is just crazy to even think about, that we have 3 guys going into the Olympics that have actually won medals, and 2 of them have won world medals. Like
world class. Yeah. All of you 3 are world class athletes.
So I think we have a unique opportunity to win 3 medals at the Olympics, which. If something like this happens, I think they might be testing the water or something in Grenada. We actually have a really, really unique opportunity to do something special. If everything goes as planned, but it's track and field, nothing goes as planned.
Nothing goes. Well, we saw that last week, right?
Nothing goes as planned. But the fact of the matter is, it's a possibility, and I think. The powers that the people that have the powers to make everything possible, so that we can feel as comfortable and as ready as possible. I think that there should not be any hesitation to give us whatever we need in order to achieve 3 medals at the Olympics.
And you feel as if you are being well resourced? There are no difficulties there?
I mean, there's always difficulties, but you take it as it comes. You take it as it comes. You go with it, and you don't dwell on the things that you can't change.
Yeah.
I've learned that as I've gotten older. I've learned that only the things that you can change is what you focus on.
That you have control over. It's sort of a glass half full mentality, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like if you start to think about the things that you don't have control over, then you just spiral out of control.
Absolutely. Now let us talk about the future of athletics in Grenada in respect of how do we identify and hone the talent of the next generation of Grenadian athletes, the next generation of Lyndon Victors, the next generation of Kirani James, the next generation of Anderson Peters. How do we ensure that we are able to keep that momentum going that has made us as a country so proud that we have been able to produce athletes like yourself?
That's a really good question. And I actually wish I had an answer for you with that. But honestly, like I don't know. I think us three, Kirani and Anderson in particular, like they're special.
Yeah.
They're really special. Like these athletes come around once in a generation. But we might have some more once in a generation talent in Grenada. How do we harness the talent? It's gonna come down to people might not want to hear that, but it's gonna come down to money. It's gonna come down to what are we willing to invest to get our athletes to that level. I think as technology involves, winning medals from a smaller country is going to be harder. Because every country now is pumping resources into their athletes to just give them a competitive edge. Like you see what Germany is doing with their athletes, what USA is doing with their athletes. Like they don't want the small countries to win medals, so they're really pumping in science into sports, and I think for us to as the generation gets older, I think we're going to have to invest. Kenny said this to me one time. He said our investment must meet our expectation. So if we're expecting medals, we must invest as if we were expecting medals. And if there's no other compromise, if you want to not invest and have high expectation, it's never going to happen. So I think it's going to come down. I can't say, oh, you have to do this in particular, or find this coach, or find this scientist, or find this. But I think whatever it is, it's going to come down to our investment as a country, not just as a government, but as a country to really harness these talent. And as a community, I think our community has a part to play, because when I grew up in my community, they will be like, this guy, don't touch him. Don't influence him. Don't do nothing. My community protected me.
Yeah.
So I think not just as a government or like as a Grenadian, but just the community. They have to, when you see these talent, and surround them and encourage them. Sometimes when I'm walking down the road, my community say ambassador. They refer to me as, the next greatest thing in my community. So like when I go out there, I have that belief that I'm already on the top from what I get from my community, and I think that the people of Latham have showed me a lot of love and a lot of security since I was a little boy.
The old adage that it takes a village, and I can say the same thing about Pomerose as well, in St. David's as well, same thing, and sadly we don't see a lot of that village type of involvement in the development of children. I really wish we can keep that as a society, where, because I always tell people, Primrose and Four Roads. Yes, Four Roads in the town of St. George, Grenville Street, aka Grenville Street, raised me in many respects because those are the two places that I grew up in. But let us talk about finally two final questions, and then of course I would end the program. But let us talk about and you mentioned it here in your response to my last question about getting everyone on board in the development of sports in the country. One of the things that this new administration is doing has to do with the formation of the Sports Council. What do you think? What role do you think the Sports Council can really play in getting that community buy-in that you speak of in the development of sports in the communities? Because as you said, it's not always about the government, right? Sports is not only about the government. Private sector has to be involved as well, So yes.
So it's hard to answer a question when I don't know the full scope of the Sports Council. I'm aware of it.
Okay.
But to tell you I know what's all that's involved in it, then I'll be answering a blind question. But I will say this though. I think the community has a part to play. I know I did go to a council meeting, and they were saying things about like the community is gonna be the one taking care of the fields and the bathroom and stuff. But I'm not too familiar with it. I'm not in tune with the whole thing, but it's something different. And I'm not gonna knock it, I'm not gonna praise it until I see how it goes, if that makes sense. So it depends on how it goes. I think it might turn out to be the best thing for the Grenadian public. But I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I always like to say, let us watch that space and see how it plays out.
Yeah. It might be a really good thing,
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
When you have people involved, it tends to it can go either way.
It sometimes can be a mix-up, eh?
Yeah, like it could go either way. It could be really good or really bad. But I think it's something different, and I welcome change. Anything that's positive and it has the genesis of it is with good intention.
Good intention, yes.
I definitely welcome it.
Absolutely. Mr. Victor, any final comments from you, sir, before you depart the Bob Report today?
No, apart from the fact that I really think we should interview our
athletes
team
more
and get them sit down in a forum and have them say their experience and how good it was, and to be able to thank the Grenada public for their support. I would not be happy until I see that done. I think that's something that we really need to make happen.
Absolutely.
Give them that platform.
Yes.
To be able to say thanks for all of, because I was pleasantly surprised when I heard some of the guys talk, and how one young guy said, he didn't know that he was going to medal, but then God helped him and God carried him through. And hearing a young man say these things, man, I think the Grenadian public needs to hear these guys and hear how happy they are. He said a little man like him, he doubted himself. But he prayed and he believed. And I think hearing young men say these things is going to be important. Like we highlight the 4x4 and what didn't happen and what could have happened, and not even talking to the guys. Everybody just running with their own opinion. And I think we got to do a better job of, figuring out exactly what happened in the 4x4 and what explanation that was given and what wasn't given and who were the actual officials. I think the Grenadian public needs to know, and the only way they're going to know is through the media. So the media needs to do right and figure out exactly what happened. So, I think that's my biggest thing.
Yes, and challenge accepted on our part here on the Bob Report. We are definitely going to be doing that, and I will reach out to you once we're able to get some of those athletes on board.
That would be great.
Yeah, my former teacher, well, she was a teacher at the time before she went on to St. David's Catholic Secondary School. That's Miss Williams, the legendary Coach Williams. That was, she taught me in primary school in Primrose. I'm aging myself now, but I'm sure she'll also be happy with that as well. So, Lyndon, thank you again for appearing on the program, sir.
Of course, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, that was Mr. Lyndon Victor, world champion Lyndon Victor. He appeared on the Bub Report this week to offer his thoughts on the just concluded CARIFTA Games, CARIFTA Games 51 that was held in St. George's, Grenada, as well as his updates in respect of his preparation for the upcoming Olympic Games. And of course, he threw out the challenge to the media that we need to really speak to the athletes who participated in the games, at the CARIFTA Games, because they are the ones who made, who put Grenada on the map at the CARIFTA in such a spectacular way, in spite of the events that occurred, that very bizarre set of events that occurred in the last day of the race. Mr. Victor made the point that, in fact, I consider it a pep talk. It was the pep talk that the entire team needed following the CARIFTA Games, saying that we should all chin up and really cheer our team on. So, viewers and listeners, on behalf of the producers of the Bub Report, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. We thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Bub Report. We are going to see you next week for another edition of the program. Take care now. Bye-bye.